All right, ladies and gentlemen. Kept you waiting long enough. We got to do My Hero and then Jujutsu after, and then I can rest up for the rest of the day. We got some. We're not going on break for this chapter, and we're not going on break for Jujutsu Kaisen. So the only thing I'm going to be reacting to next week will be just My Hero and Jujutsu, as I've said. So let's go ahead and get the formalities out of the way, shall we? Yo, peoples, Kyushu92 here, and welcome back to yet another live reaction to My Hero Academia. Last we left off in the story, it pretty much showed... You know what, it was in my head and I drew a blank. It was in my head and I drew a blank. In the last chapter, it showed the UA Fortress getting stopped. But it also showed the students of the business class cataloging everything, because they said that they weren't there to catalog all the destruction that was happening beforehand, but they said that this is how the business course does heroics. And then La Brava hacks into all their devices just so Gentle can be live streamed so that everyone can know about Gentle. And as that's going on, we see the Twice clones saying every last hero's gotta die. Then Kurogiri appears saying, I am protector of what? And then it cuts to both Present Mike and Aizawa getting, launched off of the UA Fortress, but they fall through a portal created by Kurogiri. And as that's going on, Midoriya is still fighting Shigaraki, though it's just like a recording feed. And then it shows All For One, who's trying to make his way over to where Shigaraki is, saying, granted, Tomura's impulse for destruction eclipsed all my hopes, but that is a minor detail. Now that this body's role is done, injecting my quirk factor into Tomura will broaden my authority and put a lid on him. Because All For One intends to get to Tomura, inject more of his quirk factor into Tomura, so that the All For One aspect of his quirk can take over Tomura's mind. And as that happens, All For One thinks that he has the upper hand on Hawks, who intercepts him, and he blasts Hawks. But it turns out to be like an illusion created by Kami of Shiketsu High. And that is when we get the bombshell of Inasa using his wind quirk, along with the other dude, Sheki, Shinji, the other members of Shiketsu High coming up and whipping up as like a ton of Twice clones there, saying, listen up, pal, I'm the guy who decides which way the wind blows, since, he has a wind quirk. So now we get to find out what happens in chapter 381. So we get everyone here. We get Kami Utsushimi, Shiketsu High Hero Course.
Is that All For One? I thought he, didn't have a face.
Seiji, his name is Seiji, not Shenji. Seiji Shishikura, Shiketsu High Hero Course. I would like nothing more than to kill him and avenge my father, but alas. And then Inasa Yoarashi, Shiketsu High Hero Course. Nope, can't give in to spite and hatred. That'd be giving the big bad what he wants. Indeed. And then it cuts to Seiji, who says, indeed, as a prison guard my dad set out to protect, I shall take up his mantle, as it shows All For One facing off against Shiketsu High. Because here's the thing, All For One has had tabs on literally everyone, but it was mainly just around UA that most of his plans were centered. He never really worried about Shiketsu High interfering. So, Kami's illusion quirk surprising him was not something he had planned. But then it cuts to all the rest of the Shiketsu High students who pops up, including the dude that's covered in hair, as he goes, we're hearing that Shigaraki and Deku have left the cage. Shishikrosi. Shishicross. Yeah, that's his name. Shishikura's hero name. Shishicross, we've got alums here too. Whatever it takes, we've got to put a lid on this chaos. And then it cuts to Tokoyami, who's flying in after being complete. He still has the face when he was utterly surprised by Kami's illusion. He was just like, ah! He still has that face as he's flying over to Pixie Bob. Chapter 381, Dark. Before it's too late, Toga needs to be subdued, while we also pepper All For One with every range attack we've got. And then it just shows All For One, who's, getting aimed at, but he's also using some of the Twice clones as personal shields to, kind of protect himself out of the way. Protect himself. And then someone chimes in. It's Sukauchi. You hanging in there, Hawks? Oh, Sukauchi. Yeah, your backup came in the nick of time. Saved my life. Actually, they were on the move before we submitted the request. Anyhow, we've heard how All For One has his old body back, so keeping him there at Gunga could decide this whole war. Stop him from getting away by any means necessary. And then it cuts to All For One as he's touching on this Twice clone, and I guess he's attempting something as he goes, I can only steal a quirk by touching the true body. Initially, they were mindful of the risks that accompanying challenging me, that accompany challenging. What is that? Oh, initially, they were mindful of the risks that accompany challenging me with a large force. No more holding back, then? Tossing aside all precaution to bring me down? Very well. And then All For One just smiles. And then multiple stalks comes out of his back. Multiple stalks comes up out of his back. And he combines every single quirk he has to just nuke the area where everyone is. And a lot of people get hit. Like the Mushroom Girl, I'm trying to make out who this is. People get hit. A lot of people get hit by this quirk attack. He started combining even more quirks at once. So this combination of quirks is even greater than the combination of quirks he used to try and beat All Might prior. This massive combination of quirks all together is just one big, massive ball of death. Look! Those still on your feet, don't let up! Stand strong, defenders! Look, he's been stopped in place! Keep up those attacks! So late in the game, you still think you'll somehow emerge from this, even without the one man who can stand up against me. And as he's saying this, it shows Endeavor flying in one direction as Toya, body still burning, just making a beeline for him. And then we get like this whole big spiel from All For One. Even without the one man who can stand up to me. That's not bravery. You are just ignorant of my golden age, as a generation that, from a young age, witnessed All Might's rise, and the next that only ever knew a world where he reigned supreme. Ignorant of the era where all trembled in fear of something imperceptible lurking unseen in the dark. When all were tainted by suspicion, resentment, exploitation, and prejudice during my golden dark age. And then it shows All For One getting caught up in a wind blast made by none other than Inasa. Nah, we know about that stuff. I mean, never heard of you, but they teach us that junk in contemporary history class. And me, I decided to keep watching my pal Todoroki and his dad, to root for them. That hot-blooded passion is gonna beat out fear to win the day! And then it cuts to Hawks. And then it cuts to Hawks, who looks at All For One as a bunch of other quirks are being used inside this wind tunnel, and All For One sees this. Embedding ranged attacks within this cage of wind. Time to steal a few, perhaps. Oh, All For One's intending to steal more quirks. He intends to steal more quirks as he erupts in a massive shockwave of those black and red tendrils that he uses to latch onto people. He just explodes and it blows back everybody. Gah! Inasa! Keep up that windstorm while blowing those toga doubles into the air! Then it shows Inasa get hit directly in his face by one of these spikes. He gets hit directly in the face by one of this. You've got it! My quirk's even stronger when the weather's real blustery to start with! Forget you and your ancient glory days! What I want to see is a future built by the guys I'm cheering on! And then it cuts to Hawks, who's just thinking, Endeavor. It's not just one for all. You've done your job paving it forward too. And then it cuts to Hawks thinking, no progress? I disagree. We're seeing it here. One for All is a power that links people's hearts. One for All is a power that links people's hearts. It's not just One for All. You've done your job paving it forward too. And then it cuts to All for One as he thinks, I can't stand that look in their eyes. I can't stand that look in their eyes. Looking past me, having lost none of that light. Well, no. The light has gone out, yet they stoke the flames, like heaping kindling onto the fire. You dare not approach, for fear of losing your quirks to me. Enough nonsense. Come and meet your fate! And then all of a Then all of a sudden, this big, massive black This big, massive black void. This big, massive black void is just looming behind All for One, and it stops him from speaking. And it's Tokoyami. The darkness power that Tokoyami has, it is literally so big, it's taking up a whole panel. This sensation. An attack I need to dodge. I needed it to dodge at all costs. That explains it. And then it cuts to the Tokoyami on the inside going, even darkness comes in a range of shades. So you don't get to speak of the dark. As it shows a kid Tokoyami as he's laying in bed with his darkness quirk right next to him. That muddy, dismal darkness you brought about. And then it cuts to the students, looking after Deku when he showed up to the UA stronghold to get some rest. That muddy, dismal darkness you brought about. We've already devoured it whole! And it shows Tokoyami is basically in a massive, almost kaiju-sized dark shadow. It literally is so huge that it towers all the way into the sky over All for One. Those sudden storm clouds that shrouded us all from the light of day extended the time limit on my power. As for the flames, they shrunk as the windstorm tore up the trees and all. Please, envelop me with your earth, so I might amass darkness. All Might told me that you could not steal Endeavor's quirk simply by grasping his flames. This is why I was chosen to support Hawks and Endeavor. Dark Shadow, total release! He started prepping for this the second Shiketsu showed up to help. Crush him! Tokoyami! And then it cuts to Inasa who goes, here's a tailwind for a boost! If I was able to pay it forward to you even a little, then dirtying these wings was well worth it. As it shows Hawks behind Tokoyami. As Tokoyami... Yo! This might be the greatest attack I've ever seen since I seen Midoriya use Detroit Smash Quintuple, and Star and Stripe use basically her new order quirk to create an air kaiju version of herself that eclipses the clouds and use it was like some sort of Norse weapon. It wasn't what was it called? I forget. It wasn't Gungnir, but the massive attack she used in order to hit Shigaraki so hard that he got embedded into the ocean. Tokoyami uses Dark Shadow, total release, Abyssal Black Body, Light of Boulder, and using the wind boost, this tailwind boost from Inasa, that also helps Tokoyami. He pretty much punches All for One, with All for One trying to brace up against it, and it just shows Tokoyami using this giant version of Dark Shadow to punch into All For One, and it just shows a massive explosion of a shockwave from the point of impact. And that's where the chapter ends. Yo, everyone is showing why they're heroes. Yo, this is... Yo, hold on. I gotta pull this up. Yo, this chapter was amazing. I gotta go over the notes here. Yes. Okay, right here. All For One becomes irritated at the look in their eyes, looking past him and are constantly stoking the flames even after the light has gone out. He says it's all for naught since they won't come too close for fear he'll steal their quirks, only to be stunned into silence as a massive dark shadow emerges from behind. Seeing Tsukuyomi in this state causes All For One to realize what made him tense up in their initial encounter. Yo! Tokoyami and Dark Shadow was the reason why All For One was really massively on the defensive before he used a rewind drug to heal his body. That moment where he got tense and felt like he had to defend himself at all costs was because of this. Tsukuyomi says that even darkness comes in a range of shadows, and that they've already devoured the filthy darkness that he brought, revealing Dark Shadow's giant, monstrous form. Thanks to the dark clouds blocking the sunlight, the flames dying out by the rainstorm, and Pixie Bob covering him in the earth to pile up his darkness, Tsukuyomi has allowed Dark Shadow to achieve its total release, full power, telling him what All Might said, how he can't steal Endeavor's quirk just by touching his flames, which is why he was tasked with supporting them. Hawks thinks about how he had been able to support him as Dark Shadow, boosted by Inasa's whirlwind, unleashes Black Abyss Light of Balder, punching All For One down into the ground with a direct hit. So, also a couple of notes here. Seiji's father is revealed to have been killed by All For One during the assault on Tartarus. So Seiji already has like a big, massive stake in this whole battle that's going on right now. The heroes and the backup of the Shiketsu High students unleash all of their attacks on All For One, who is unable to steal their quirks unless he directly touches them. He unleashes several powerful quirk combinations, but does little to deter their assault. That's something that All For One can't stand. What he has prided himself on this entire time is not only being a very powerful villain, but the fear of him dictating a lot of the hero's actions. The sense of caution, the fear, the desperation. That's what he's always banked on being what will help him out. The fear that they could all die, the hesitation that could come across facing him because of his reputation. But now, that very thing he's banked on being the big key factor on causing people to fear him is no longer something people fear him for. And that's why he's getting irritated. He's getting irritated that the individuals he once was able to just literally strike fear in at the mention of his name, or even his mere presence, the light in their eyes reads, "We no longer fear you anymore." They're not even looking directly at All For One. They're looking into the future where he's no longer a threat. And the fact that their mindset is not focused on being fearful of him, it irritates him. Because everything he's worked so hard to achieve, all the fear that has allowed him to gain this much power, that fear is no longer driving people's actions against him. Now it's just people wanting to get rid of him so that they can look into a future where he does not exist. And that absolutely ticks him off. Because he loves to play mind games. His entire speech when he was talking this whole time, the entire speech that he was talking, he had going this whole time was just, another subtle mental way to manipulate people into thinking like there is no hope. No matter how hard you try, I'm going to win. But the thing is, his speeches, that used to strike fear in people, they don't work anymore. His tactics are no longer working. They don't care about him and his speeches. All they care about is beating him so that the world has a future. And the fact that they are not being fearful of him is what's causing him to be so on edge. What's causing him to be so irritated. The heroes have grown beyond All for One, and he hates it. It's just like the Joker at the end of Batman Arkham Knight. He seriously was under the impression that no one's ever going to forget me. No one's ever going to forget me, even though he's dead in the series, and he had hoped to take over Batman's body in order to basically live forever, so to speak, to continue to live on. And as you go through the hallucinations that Joker was having before the end of the game, there were moments where you would see the Joker's funeral. Barely anyone showed up. Only a couple of people were sad that he was dead. And then you had other moments where people were talking about the death of the Joker, and they was all like, "Oh, he's dead? Oh well," and they moved on. The fact that people moved on was something that the Joker could just not get over, because he wanted to be remembered forever. All people always fearful under the name of the Joker. So when people would start to forget about him, that is a worst possible scenario for him. Like, he didn't want to be forgotten, but the world still moves on without him. He's dead, and he's now that aspect of Joker that was having all these hallucinations is now locked in the deep recesses of Batman's mind, never to be seen again. The same can be said of All for One. He cannot stand the thought that the people that he once had in the palm of his hand are now growing beyond him. They're moving beyond him. That's something he cannot stand. So it's irritating to see something that during his dark golden age of ruling Japan with fear, possibly even the world with fear, that age is now over. And the heroes are now fully standing up to him, which is something, like I said, he cannot just comprehend. And now we got Tokoyami coming in here with the most clean. He's coming in here with the most clean, direct hit on All for One. Because mind you, All for One hasn't been hit this whole time. Ever since his body regenerated, he hasn't been hit this whole time. But Tokoyami, Tsukuyomi, with the full total release of Dark Shadow, comes in and just plants this Godzilla fist-sized punch onto All for One and just embeds him into the ground. All we see is just the aftermath of the dust being kicked up from the point of impact, and that's the end of the chapter. See, Daz, good to see you. Look at you, homie. You clean? Yeah, man, I had to get it shaved. You know how I do things. So, here's something. I originally thought that when I saw those eyes, I was thinking, Kurogiri? But no, I remembered that it was Dark Shadow. So this entire time when Tokoyami was off on his own, he basically was preparing to use this against All for One, but with the boost of everything that's going on because of the rainstorm, which made it even darker, which helps with the power of Dark Shadow. After everything that went on, Tsukuyomi had by far one of the greatest moments of this entire series. I am so proud of Tokoyami. I am so proud of Shiketsu High. I am so proud of all the heroes that are here fighting All for One. And mind you, the Twices are no longer the biggest concern right now, because Inasa is just using his whirlwind quirk to just throw them up in the air. And All for One is using vain attempts. Allie, good to see you. Hey. All for One is using vain attempts to try and, keep everyone fearful of him, because he says, like, you won't even dare come near me because you are scared that I'll take your quirks. But what Endeavor confirmed is that he can't take quirks if he can't actually touch the body, which is why he couldn't take Endeavor's quirk, because Endeavor is capable of encasing himself in nothing but flame. So when it comes to Tokoyami's case, he's the only other quirk user who's capable of encasing himself in his own quirk to keep his actual body from being touched. And since he's now in this giant, massive body of Dark Shadow, All for One can't take his quirk. Therefore, Tokoyami is the best option to fight All For One right now. And he's already dealt a massive blow to this already recently regenerated Superbad. So, man, you would think that a chapter like this would be something we would go on Brave for, but it's not. Like, it's so beautiful. The speech, not the speech, but he was going so late in the game, you still think you'll somehow emerge from this, even without the one man who can stand up to me. Because like I said, Endeavor's the only one who can actually contend with All For One physically without fear of his quirk getting stolen, simply because All For One can't touch him. Doesn't account for Tokoyami, though. I won't say I like it, but this display of All For One combining every single one of his quirks into like this big laser beam death ball attack, yeah, that's scary. That's not bravery. You are just ignorant of my golden age, as a generation that from a young age witnessed All Might's rise, and the next that only ever knew a world where he reigned supreme. Ignorant of the era where all trembled in fear of something interceptible lurking unseen in the dark, when all were tainted by suspicion, resentment, exploitation, and prejudice during my golden dark age. And he's just like, he's trying to psychologically toy and mess with all these heroes talking to him. Somehow, some way, I feel like All For One is going to give Rewind to someone else. Here's the thing. The Rewind is not a quirk that All For One can use. He's in a state of Rewind. Who is Tokoyami? He's the bird guy. He's the guy with the bird head. That's Tokoyami. But he's also known as Tsukuyomi. His hero name is Tsukuyomi. But Tokoyami is the bird guy who's in the Gunga Mountains with the rest of the heroes fighting All For One. Midoriya is off in the middle of the city fighting Shigaraki right now. But I feel like All For One is going to give Rewind to someone else. But like I said, Ali, All For One doesn't have the Rewind quirk in him. He doesn't have Ares' Rewind quirk. His body is in a state of Rewind. I know, Cedez, it's a lot of names. It's a lot of different names and a lot of characters. Don't worry, I remember them. Most of them, anyway, let me be honest. But his body is currently in a state of Rewind. And it's going to keep rewinding until he fades out of existence, which is why he's been trying his hardest to get to Shigaraki to implant more of his quirk factor into him so that the All For One personality inside of Shigaraki takes over the body fully. So he can't just pass on the rewind that's happening to him to someone else, because it's not a quirk that he can directly control or implant in someone. It's the state his entire body is in. He's going to keep rewinding until he completely fades. It's a one-way trip. But everyone is attempting to keep him here in the Gunga Mountains, so one, he not only can't get to Shigaraki, but two, the rewind quirk is gonna keep going until All For One basically rewinds out of existence completely. It's going to keep going. I've only seen 5 episodes, and he could get past it. The only person that kind of interests me was All Might. Oh, there's so much more to My Hero Academia, Cedez, than just the 5 episodes you've seen. But I know and heard he died. All Might? All Might is alive. See, this is what happens when you don't. This is what happens when you only stop at 5 episodes. All Might is fine. He's still alive. But given what we know from this... Wow, my face looks really bright. I apologize for that. Given what we've seen of this chapter, either one or two things are going to happen. Either we see what happens to All For One after he gets punched by Tsukuyomi here with Dark Shadow's Light of Balder attack. But I know and heard he died. No, he didn't die. He didn't die, see this? All Might's alive. All Might's alive. You need to You really need to get to your people. Someone told me he died. Oh, don't listen. Don't listen to them because they don't know what they're talking about. As a person who reads this, I can say that he's not dead. I was kind of hoping All For One could do that because I thought maybe he would give it to Dobby and that would rewind Dobby back to an unburnt state. The question is then, how do you stop the rewind? You don't. Like I said, All For One said this was a one-way trip. The drug itself was not to just rewind All For One back to his previous state and then stop. No, it's coursing through his body, and it's going to keep rewinding him until he's gone. Matter of fact, if I go over... If I go over here and then I go to the synopsis, currently. All right, if I come to this point. All right, here we go. Hold on, the page scrolled down. I want to get this. I want to get this knowledge. Let's see. Where is it? Okay. Back at the mountains, All For One is revealed to have used his trump card, and this is back in chapter 363. Has used his trump card, that is the reverse-engineered quirk-destroying drug, rewinding his body back to his prime state. He tells Endeavor and Hawks that while the heroes managed to keep the villains on the defensive during the previous war, it won't be the same now, since heroes are those who defend, villains are those who violate, and they will plunge headlong towards their dream. He further compliments Endeavor, not thinking he'd had to play the card against him, and with how light his body feels, he swiftly makes his way down to the battlefield, stealing the quirks off nearby heroes, as well as their capes to cover his nudity. Hawks quickly pushes a hero away while All For One reveals that after using the drug's rewind effect, he's doomed to vanish. He states himself that it's a one-way trip. He is doomed to disappear. I wonder what All Might is going to do. Last we saw a couple of chapters back, he was walking out of the door with a briefcase in hand. Yeah, it's been a hot minute. But yeah, he's after using the drug's rewind effect, he's doomed to vanish, but since his dream has already been passed on to Tomura, he intends to rescue him from the hero's trap before he's gone. Hawks, attempting to stall for time, asks All For One what is his dream after obtaining One For All. And then all the events that is going on here transpire. And they haven't fully updated this chapter on All For One's page quite yet. But yeah, like I said, All For One is on a one-way trip. That's why he's so desperate to get to Tomura, so he can inject more of his quirk factor into him, so that All For One can take over his body. But every second that happens when he gets stalled is going to make it harder and harder for him to get to Tomura in time, in order to see that plan realized, which is why all the heroes are working so hard to stall him, because they know he's on a one-way trip. That's the reason why. What if All Might has the same rewind drug? That's an interesting thought. What if he has it? Hold on, let me come up here. Let's pull up All Might real quick, because it's been a hot minute since we've seen anything related to All Might. So let me go to his synopsis. And then go to Final War. And last we saw, as the battle, when with nearly everyone warped, All Might orders Fat Gum in command to capture the remaining threats in the area and to watch over Yuga. All Might then tells Nato to regroup with Shoto, as now that the separation is successful, they can begin Phase 2. As the battle continues, All Might receives word that Shoto has successfully defeated Dabi, getting emotional over his student's success. Now, Masa reminds him they need to keep this up, as All Might proceeds to inform the rest of the battlefields of this status, giving them all a boost in motivation. And this was all the way back in chapter 353, 10 chapters before 363, where All For One reveals that he's on borrowed time. But if All Might, I mean, it's taken All For One a while to rewind because he's way older than All Might, but maybe All Might will take it at the last minute. But the thing is, if All Might does indeed have that quirk destroying drug that can also rewind, and it puts him back in a state, like a muscular state like he used to be, then he would be on borrowed time too, doomed to disappear. Plus, he doesn't have all One For All in his body anymore, so it's not like he can use it. And that way we get to see a Prime All For One and Prime All Might fight. But I don't know if it's going to work that way, since One For All is already inside of Midoriya's body. I don't know if rewinding is going to make it so that One For All is back inside of All Might for him to be able to use his quirk again. Because All For One has regenerated to his previous body, but he's still using the duplicate of his quirk that's in his body. He didn't get like his original quirk back. He's just using a duplicate in his body. So physically, as far as quirks go, it didn't restore that original quirk back to his body, even though he rewound himself before his face got, I want to say, punched off by All Might. So I don't know if All Might, if he were to use that drug, would get One For All back in his body so he can fight All For One all over again. I think that ship has sailed. I honestly want to say that ship has sailed the moment he had that final battle with him, and then he gave up the last vestige of his power. I don't know if that would be something that Horikoshi does for the story. I don't know. But all I know is these students that All For One look down on, saying like you're bringing children to an adult's fight, looking at them like insects. So All For One is Madara Uchiha? To a degree, you could say so. Think Madara Uchiha after he pretty much came back to life. But not on the, well, I would say, yeah, they're both monstrously strong. And he just displayed a massive combination of quirks that basically nuke the entire battlefield where they are. So you could say he's kind of like Madara in a way. You could say that. But we're not going on break for the next chapter of My Hero Academia. All I can say is that Tsukuyomi Tokoyami had such a phenomenal moment in this chapter, and I'm proud of him. Dealing the first blow against All For One since Endeavor, because no one else has really been able to deal that much damage to All For One, save for Hawks slicing through his mask, and Endeavor pretty much incinerating his entire body, requiring All For One to use the rewind. I'm so glad Tokoyami got to shine this chapter. His quirk is so OP, it really is. It really is. And the fact that he's been training so hard with it, and he's able to cause this giant kaiju version of Dark Shadow to pop up, and it's still him, like he's not struggling to contain it, it's still him. Because remember when some of the students, some of the League of Supervillains tried to get to the students that were at the training camp with Pixie Bob and the rest of the Wild Pussycats, and Dark Shadow was going wild because it was not only dark, but Tokoyami couldn't control him. Now we got Tokoyami with much better control over Dark Shadow, and they're both in sync, and they both use this sync to take on All For One, an individual that struck fear in the hearts of everyone for a full century. Because remember, this dude has been around since the formation of quirks, so he's like over a century old. He's over 100 years old. But for Tokoyami to take on this individual that everyone absolutely feared, because everyone is starting to fear All For One less now. It's more so we need to stop him versus I'm scared to face him. And that shows you just how much the heroes have progressed ever since All For One has come back. Because people were fearful what would happen if All For One and Shigaraki joined forces together. But now it's no longer a fear of them joining forces together. Now it's just hope and faith and sense of will that we're going to come out of this alive. You're going to be defeated. You're going to be gone. And then we can concern ourselves with the future. The fear that All For One, like I said like a while back, the fear that All For One has prided himself on instilling in others is no longer a key factor for his success because less fear him now. And that's the worst possible thing for him because it's so irritating that people don't show fear in him. Because if they don't show fear in him, then they think that they can win. And if they think that they can win, then they're going to use every ounce of strength to see if they can win. And that's something that bothers all For One more than anything else because he can't stand fighting villains who don't give up. He likes to strike fear in people so he can cut everyone down while they're distracted. But no one's distracted right now. They're all focused on bringing him down. And with no fear, I bet you anything, all these heroes could stand up to Big Mom and not have their souls taken because they have no fear as well. Great chapter. Can't wait to see next week's. Gotta move on to Jujutsu Kaisen because I can't wait to read that. And then I'm gonna be resting for the rest of the day. So to everyone here, all I can say at the end of the day is, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. And if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed what you saw here today, then like, subscribe, share this stream with everyone you know because the more the merrier. And maybe even consider becoming a member because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. So have a fantastic day. And once again, as always, later peoples. I am so proud of Tokoyami.